All right, welcome back to the 25th Annual Austin Film Festival, Writers Festival, talking to Jenna Kanell, who is, okay, you're like Jill of all trades here, like writer, director, producer, actress.
Stunts, I do stunts as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't feel like an underachiever at all right now.
I can't do them all at once.
All right, so, so we're going to talk about your short, but like cool thing, you are in our closing night film this year is Frontrunner with Hugh Jackman, and you're in that film.
Yeah.
Acting.
Yes.
Acting in that film.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. So congratulations. Look forward to seeing that.
Thank you. Me too. I'm excited to see it.
I forget that people sometimes do not get to, if you were not the director,
right,
like you were on this one, sometimes you just don't get to see it until months or years later.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It's been a year actually, yeah. I'm super excited.
Good. All right, so let's talk Max and the Monster, which is a narrative short. And we were talking earlier, you said you were feeling really good about your first screening. You like the block that you're in, the shorts block that you're in. And so, so tell us a little bit about your experience here in Austin.
My experience in Austin has been fantastic. All the people here are cool. There are a lot of weirdos here, which I'm really into. I love this city. It's I love it so far, and this festival has been incredible too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So specifically, Max and the Monster. Tell me. Gosh, I don't want to spoil anything, but then again, I want us to have like a fun conversation. So okay, let's just roll with it. We'll just play it by ear. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Max and the Monster is a 12-minute dark comedy about dealing with trauma. The idea being that trauma is hard to talk about, and in this case it's specifically from sexual assaults, but that's never spelled out, and so I want people to be able to assign their own monsters, so to speak. It's intended to be funny because I think that provides another layer of accessibility and doesn't isolate anybody in the audience from understanding what the experience of PTSD is like.
Yeah. And it's so creative because, we are dealing with some dark matters, which we get in the beginning. The first thing we see is, the shadow creeping over our lead character, Maxine. But then one of the next images we get is, our lead actor, the monster, is this adult man in this giant felt costume. Looks like something out of Where the Wild Things Are is what it reminded me of.
That's wonderful. That was definitely the idea. He was supposed to be kind of like a mesh between Where the Wild Things Are, this like kind of childish character, and then a Sesame Street character on acid. So I'm glad that...
I totally got that.
Thank you.
No,
awesome.
I love it. Okay, so tell me about your lead actress who played Maxine. She really... Not that she carried it all on her own, but she's in every frame.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then that was definitely intentional. I intentionally didn't want us to ever see her enter or exit frame and have it be subjective and have us be with her the whole time and be with her on her experience. And Alexis is very, very talented. She's really good. And I didn't know her prior to this, and she came in and auditioned, and it was pretty obvious that she was the one.
Yeah, okay, and our lead actor, our monster,
David,
let's hear about
fantastic.
Him.
Yeah, he actually is someone I've known and been colleagues and friends with for a while, and I've always wanted to work with him, and then this seemed like the perfect opportunity because, as I'm sure you could tell, he's a theater actor, and so he's very comfortable with physicality, and he's very comfortable with improv, and all of that was really, really important to playing Monster because he's supposed to essentially be this kind of toddler in a man in his 50s body, and who just wants attention, but at the same time is very lewd and crass.
Sure.
And they definitely had to have a lot of chemistry, and that was something that we saw when we brought them both into the room.
Yeah, that's the interesting juxtaposition is like it is really funny to see this adult male in, the big felt costume with the googly eyes and everything. But at the same time, when he's talking to Max, it's the most vulgar things that
degrading.
You can say. Comments about her body, or she's going to put on lipstick and like, oh, that's a nice horror shade of red, or something like that.
Exactly.
And it just keeps going and going. So it's
so he's supposed to, the idea is that he himself is not scary, it's just that he's there all the time. The only thing threatening about him is just his consistent presence, and he's essentially that voice that we all have in our heads when we're like getting ready for a date or a job interview of you're not good enough, you'll never have this, so-and-so is better than you, that, you know, all of us have some form of that voice, and he's an embodiment of that.
Yeah. When, like, after I watched it, I tried to go back and imagine what it would look like if I could absent him from each frame, you know, both physically and his voice.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, well, there's the, you know, trying to think what it would look like for Maxine, and it is, you know, from the outside viewpoint, it's a panic attack, essentially. She's not arguing with little monsters, she's having panic attacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thrilled that you picked that up, because that was definitely the idea, that if he wasn't there, she would look, you know, like she was talking to nobody, and that she was just, you know, tense and experiencing this thing. And so that's essentially, I wanted to make it easier to talk about, because if you don't have PTSD yourself, it's really hard to fathom, well, why can't you just be okay? Or why can't you just do this thing? Why can't you just have confidence? And so he's kind of supposed to be this a physical representation of something intangible, because you're right, without him it is just a panic attack.
Yeah. And I like how other elements of it reflect that as well. Like, I don't know if it was totally intentional on the part of the filmmaker, or just reflecting the passage of time. In the beginning, you know, we first meet Max, and it's night, and it's all this blue light, you know, gorgeous blue light. And then by the end of it, you know, it's daylight, she's out and about, she's doing her thing, and gorgeous full spectrum of color.
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually, there's a Desmond Tutu quote about how forgiveness is like when your blinds are closed and you know that the sunlight is out there, but you refuse to open the blinds or the curtains. And forgiveness is opening the curtains and choosing to let the sun shine in, even if it's not easy. And essentially, she has to forgive herself. She has to realize his presence is not her fault, and she didn't ask for him, but he's a part of her life, and she has to accept that he's a part of her life and learn how to negotiate that.
And there is, you know, a kind of a pivotal scene in there, and it's two parts when, you know, Max, she has a panic attack and has to leave a situation.
Yeah.
And she tries calling a counselor, or whoa, we got a mosquito in here. Tries calling, it's not super clear if it's a counselor or a victim's hotline or the police.
Yeah.
Where we get a couple of snippets of conversation detailing what happened to her. And there's a line about, you know, he doesn't know, referring to her attacker, he doesn't know he's out there living his life right now, which, you know, it's such a reflection on that's not what Maxine is able to do.
Right, absolutely. I'm so happy that you picked up on all of those details. And yeah, she is calling the police, which is based on my own experience, because I'm a survivor of assault, and I had to call, I think, 3 or 4 different precincts before somebody would listen to me, and so that was essentially supposed to be reflective of that. And I had seen a lot of films while on the festival circuit with another short that I was telling you about.
Sure.
And I saw a lot of films that talked about assault and talked about trauma, and usually they showed the event, and I didn't really see many that showed, okay, that happened, now what's the rest of your life look like? It's not that this is just this isolated thing in a vacuum. Now you have to go on living, and I wanted to show something that reflected that part of the experience.
Yeah, and that scene, you know, there's 2 halves of it, and I think it really reflects this two fronts that Max is having to fight at once. On one hand, you know, to get tangible justice,
right,
you know, trying to get any kind of attention from law enforcement to, please look at my case, read my statement. And then the other half of that, you know, we don't know if this is ever going to be resolved, or the law enforcement side is ever going to be resolved or not, but there's the emotional side that, you know, regardless of how her case goes, whether or not it's ever pursued, she does have to deal with that. So she's got multiple struggles that she's trying to fight.
And even if she were to achieve justice, that wouldn't necessarily even have an effect on her own relationship with herself going through all of this. So you're right. I mean, there's the extrinsic battle of how do I see justice? How do I make sure this doesn't happen to other people? And then there's the intrinsic battle of how do I continue living with myself?
So the second part of that scene where, we see her, the conflict with law enforcement, the struggle that she's dealing with, and then she decides she's going to face her monster point blank. And she actually attacks him.
Yes.
So, okay, tell me a little bit about that, because it's very artsy, it's very abstract.
Thank you.
There's lots. It's kind of like a Jackson Pollock come to life.
Oh my goodness! Thank you so much.
So, where did that come from, and how much was improv? Like,
sure.
Was that all you? Or?
Yeah. So none of that was improv for safety reasons.
Sure, it is choreographed.
Right. And that was kind of intended to be. One of the stages of grief that you sort of go through with, because when he first shows up, she tries to ignore him and deny that he's even there, and then she tries to kill him, and obviously that doesn't do anything, and so that's kind of another step in her process towards acceptance, essentially. And yeah, that scene was meant to, I mean, the whole thing is supposed to feel kind of hyper-realistic, because I think with hyper-realism there's more of an opportunity to have an obtuse social commentary than you perhaps could otherwise, and so that's what that scene is supposed to be. It's almost a waking nightmare, because that's what it can feel like.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting choice to have the paint splatters. And that's very personal to Maxime. She's an artist, and all of that is going on. But what was your kind of intention with that, and what kind of challenges did you run into needing it to be night, but at the same time you need these vibrant colors showing up?
Oh yeah. Well, so that splatter is basically his blood. If this creature looks like this, what would his blood look like? And I thought, well, it would be green and gooey, obviously. Yeah. So that's what
it would be. The slime.
Right, exactly. It would be slime, which our Emily, our special effects artist, made some really fun. Like, I came over and she was like, "Put your hand in this." So we actually did shoot that at night. And that scene was the last one that we shot, because obviously we had to get goo all over everything.
Right. We're ruining it all.
Yeah, exactly. The colors, we built this sort of rig where we had the lights, and then we took all these scraps of gels and built a frame that was basically these different colored gels all over it, and moved it in front of the light onto her face. Because Kubas, my DP, and I wanted to play with light and with color a lot, because it's to make it feel more hyper-realistic and make it almost like this dark fairy tale, or like we were talking about, almost a dream. And that's what we were trying to do with that as well.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, and so it goes with, kind of the emotional hit of that scene, I guess, is, like you said, the acknowledgement that the monster is there.
Yeah.
And he's just going to be there.
Exactly.
For the foreseeable future. And, Max kind of finds if she just acknowledges him, then he can just be there, instead of the constant digging, the nagging, the...
Yeah, essentially.
Look at me.
Exactly, yeah. And that's kind of the turning point when she helps him up, where she realizes, okay, so you're going to be here, and now I'm acknowledging that, and like you said, I'm accepting that, and that's clearly the truth and clearly the circumstances. But if, with that being the case, can I be in control of it? And that's the turn where she realizes that she can be. That if he's going to be here, okay, but I get to say where he gets to be and how far away he is from me, and kind of negotiate it. The more powerful she feels, the more she can decide the boundaries of where he is, even if she can't get rid of him.
Yeah. There's a really moving scene towards the end where, and we don't get the conversation, because like you said, I don't think that is really the key component there, where apparently she's told the guy that she's interested in about this incident that's happened in the past. Yeah. And his reaction, I thought, was so beautiful, and it's so, if we can just say it, like,
of course, please.
He, all he says, like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I wish I could have protected you from what happened. And we're having this national conversation right now where so many men have this knee-jerk response to women's stories about, and I mean, to a degree, it is an understandable response, trying to shift that feeling of shame that they feel to, they want to say, like, well, not all men are like that.
Right.
I would never do that.
Trying to shirk responsibility.
Yes, which I'm sure they're right. Not all men are like that,
Absolutely not.
Obviously.
And he's not.
But I think we need to acknowledge that response, that kind of, well, not all men are like that. Yeah, that's not helpful.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually, RAINN, R-A-I-N-N, that organization, on their website, they have a list of responses for survivors where, because, most people don't naturally know how to respond when hearing that information. And it's hard to hear, especially about somebody that you love and care about.
Yes.
But that is the correct response. He can't, saying, I'm sorry this happened to you. It's validating this happened. I'm not denying your experience. It's validating. And I mean, the inclination to want to protect someone, there's obviously nothing wrong with that. But of course, that's not exactly how it works. And that isn't necessarily the solution. But it's basically him just listening to her and acknowledging her experience.
Yeah. And I like that, we've talked about how this is Maxine is a sexual assault survivor, but I like that you can kind of keep that vague, because you could also, you could apply that same conversation to someone who's relating a racial trauma.
Absolutely.
Perhaps to a white American friend, there is that knee-jerk response, like, well, I'm not a racist, though.
Right.
Not all white people are like that, whereas that's not validating your friend, where, like,
absolutely,
this is happening. I'm so sorry this is happening.
Oh, yeah, of course. And I mean, it's hard. I mean, I remember when someone first told me what white privilege was. I said, well, I don't have that.
Yeah, I'm not like that.
Right, exactly. I don't benefit from that, which obviously now I know, of course I do. And and I have had conversations with men in which they say, well, I'm not a rapist. I'm not contributing to rape culture. And it's the same sort of thing where we kind of, on a cosmic level, on a societal level, we all have to take responsibility for this.
Yeah. And there's another scene there at the end where Max and her monster actually meet another person and his monster. Yeah. And I like that, the other person is a young white man. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was very nice to acknowledge, I think, that, specifically in regards to sexual assault, there are these two very ignored groups, one of them being women of color. Absolutely. And the other being men.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's the other thing about a lot of conversations regarding assault, is that a lot of men have survived assault, and it's not talked about, and if you can imagine, it's stigmatized even more.
Even more, absolutely.
Yeah, and even fewer of them report, and even fewer of them talk about it. And I know men who are survivors of assault, and it was important for me to acknowledge that, and that once she was able to accept the part of herself that was this monster, that she could see that other people have them as well.
Well, tell us what's the next move for Max and her monster?
Sure. So Max and the Monster is actually a proof of concept for a series, which thanks. Yeah, which I brought. I have obviously with me at the festival, because when I was on the festival circuit prior, a lot of people will say, like, "Oh, you made this thing. What is next?" Yeah. And I didn't have anything at that time, and so I learned now, and so now I'm like, I'm here. I have the pilot script, I have the show Bible, and the pitch deck, and all that stuff. So that's what that is. And then aside from that, I also intend for Max and the Monster to have an educational run. I want to partner with like-minded organizations and with academic institutions.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Oh, awesome! Yeah,
university run for
exactly.
Sure.
To kind of use it to help implement dialogue on trauma, and like you were saying, I mean, I was purposefully vague about the assault aspect of it, because I want people to look at it and say, well, this is what my depression feels like.
Yeah, it can be applied to so many situations.
Exactly. So I hope that it's able to help people in that regard.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for stopping in with us. Congratulations on the film.
Thanks.
And I'm excited to see where this series goes.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you.